build my gallows and build them high. Makes a long time climbing before I die. I want the chance to spit in his eye. Oh, well, they gave me ball, but I can see between to a dusty yard and a long gone green. They call that freedom, if you know what I mean. And I dry my sorrows, but the whiskey's gone. I'm sober.
Hello everybody, welcome to Longbangers. This is episode 157. I'm Matty, joined tonight by Colin. Colin, how you doing?
Good. Tired, but good. Aye. Yourself?
Good. Yeah, also tired. Kind of feeling the effects of a day's drinking yesterday now. So I'm no young enough for that sort of lark these days. John, how you doing?
I'm also tired, so I think that's the hat trick, which is a nice segue into introducing our guest,
who was never tired on the pitch. He was here, he was there, he was every fucking where. Ivan Sproule. Ivan, great to have you on.
Pleasure to be on.
How are you doing?
I keep him well, as I say. I'm only tired after now, running after my young boys, but no, these boys seem to have had a few drinks, so I wish I was tired after too.
I was just saying to Colin before you joined the call. So me and my wife were out yesterday to see my son, who works in a pub called in Edinburgh, and we were. One of his pals works in. We've known his pal since they were at nursery together, and we just ordered our first drinks. And as they bring them out to the table, we're maybe 2 or 3 sips into it, and William comes over. He says, "Oh, I've had 3 missed pours of Guinness. Do you want them?" So you didn't have to pay for them. So we said, "Aye, that's great." So we got 3 pints of Guinness, and then throughout the day, he just kind of kept coming out with more and more free drinks for us. So I think we spent about £7 on some chips and then £8 on the first round, and we drank from 5:30 to about 10 o'clock. It was brilliant.
And the Williams getting sacked.
Nah, it's brilliant. Apparently it was all fine. His boss was fine with it. Anyway, Ivan, thank you again for taking a bit of time out your Sunday night to talk to us. We're going to obviously talk to you about your time at Hibs. So I suppose if we go right to the very beginning, you were playing with Institute and you got invited over for a trial. How did that come about and what happened?
As I say, I was playing in the Irish League over here, so I was about to take a move to Derry City. Derry City playing the League of Ireland, and they were obviously full time. So back home, it got a bit of headlines back here, and the move was about to go through that week, that Friday night, and an agent had rung me and said, "Listen, to go over for a week's trial to Hibernian in Scotland." So it was a no-brainer. Derry City allowed they almost had the deal done, but I knew that the manager was going to sign for it, and he said, "Listen, when you get the opportunity to go into a club like Hibs, he wouldn't stand him away," which I thought was a respectful thing for him to do as well, because he could have been selfish and just got me signed for Derry City. But he let me go, and I had the week's trial, and as I said, I went across and things worked well for me, and all those games later, the rest is history.
Because it was Tony Mowbray's team that you joined. So what was Tony Mowbray's sales pitch to you to kind of come across?
Well, listen, I'll be honest with you. I knew about the club, but didn't know much about the players and that. And then, even when you landed there, Dean Shields was there. So Kenny Shields was obviously a manager back here, and Kenny had rung me and said, "Listen, my son's there, Dean." And I'd met Dean briefly before, so him and Sam Morrow I latched on to them as soon as I arrived. But I realised quite quickly that they probably had a special group of young players. Dean informed me and let me know about the Kevin Thompsons, the Scott Browns, the Stephen Whitakers, the Stephen Fletchers, Gary O'Connor, Derek O'Riordan, David Murphy. They were all there at that time. So I suppose you could have landed under a worse squad and tried to get a place for yourself. But no, listen, I had one thing that probably was the one thing I was blessed with, was my pace. And I think I was able to use it in one of those parks that they used to train. We didn't have any fancy training ground back then. So between dodging the dog poo and the pitches and and David Murphy and Gary Caldwell's tackles, I think it was the Thursday. I think we had a bounce game, and I was up against David Murphy, and fortunately for me, I gave Murphy a bit of a roasting that day, and the boys says to me after, "Not many people do that to Murph, so you've done all right for yourself." And then Tony pulled me in the Thursday evening and said, "Listen, we'd like to speak to you about obviously signing up." So flew back home and then flew back over on the Monday, and the deal was done. And it was a bit of a gamble, but listen, it was a massive gamble that paid off well for me.
And so if you're coming from and I didn't mean this disrespectfully, but a league that was perceived to be kind of a lower standard than the Scottish Premiership. Did you feel like you had a real point to prove, or that a wee bit of doubt in your head that you might not make it on the trial, or were you kind of confident that you would make it?
No, I knew. Listen, I knew. Obviously, you're late into the game, and you don't have that same what you would class, coaching and weekend, day in, day out training. We didn't have that because obviously it's part-time football in the Irish League, and but the one thing that I always was blessed with was pace, and that's one thing that I don't think no matter what coach gets you or how many times you train, if you're born with something, you're going to use it, and that was probably the one thing that Tony Mowbray probably gambled on as well. Is I wasn't the finished article by no stretch of the imagination when I arrived, and listen, there was a lot of reserve games at Easter Roads and Tuesday nights and Wednesday nights, and I knew it was I had a lot to learn, so I had to be patient, and I went across, and again, it was the one thing that Hibs could never teach me was that that 5 yards and getting away from people, and then Tony Mowbray, as I said, rounded off the edges with Mark Venus, and I suppose they turned me into the player I was that had the career for over the span of 10 years away from home, and be eternally grateful, I suppose, to Tony for that.
And what do you remember your debut?
I think the debut was up in Inverness, and it was cold.
It's always cold up there.
up to Inverness, and again, it took me time. I just didn't come over and go straight into squads, but Tony told me whenever I'd signed that anyway, he said, listen, you're going to have to work hard and learn and, integrate into the full-time environment and, suppose get up to pace for the games. And he dropped, I was putting in drips and drabs, and that game against Inverness up there, just to come on and say you had got that game, it wasn't my best game, but it was the start. And then after that, it just made you want more and more. And as I say, never forget it. And to me, it's just one of those things now that, you're so glad that you persevered with all those reserve team games, and I suppose never give up, and after I get that first one done, the rest kind of rolled after that.
And what was the team like? You mentioned that you come into a team that was kind of really talented. Who kind of stood out when you got there, kind of in amongst that first team squad?
To me, they were a counter attack. Hibs were built in pace. That game Boozlin in midfield, who was very, very accomplished in the ball, and that you obviously had, Scott Brown was a different player back then, and Kevin Thompson, and Gary Cobble and David Murphy, and I suppose Stephen Whittaker. They had so many young players, and I think they played. My lasting memories, they played with no fear. They never really turned up to Parkhead or Ibrox or Tynecastle looking for a draw or thinking. They always were that confident. I don't know what I wouldn't call it arrogance, but I think they believed a lot in themselves. And I think that was youth. Youth fears nothing really, and I think Tony Mowbray channeled that in the right way. He kept their feet in the ground, but he also let them believe that they were as good as anybody else. And for me, it suited my style of game because we were a counter-attacking style side at times, and I suppose for me integrating into that and probably being used as a bench player at the start. It probably played to my strengths because you come on and we were trying to win games later on, and I suppose everything was kind of set up for me to succeed then. And but the one player that it was hard to put one player out because they all developed at different times. And every single player that I've mentioned there has went on to have a fantastic career. Gary O'Connor in his prime was a hell of a striker. Derek Reardon could finish with both feet. Stephen Whittaker's went on to a fantastic career, and obviously Scott Brown being Scott Brown, he's went on to have a career with Scotland, with Celtic, and he's probably one of my close friends now in football as well. But for what he's done and where he's took himself to is towards even global. He always knew he was special, and listen, he's went on to do that. And I think there's none of us in this group chat here can't say that Scott Brown was the pick of that bunch.
Would you ever put together like a legends team out of that group of players?
For
just
me,
all get together, even just for a kickabout.
Maybe for a few pints, right enough. No, listen, Gary O'Connor, Derek Reardon, Stephen Whittaker, they're all Kevin Thompson. They're all lads you could lift I could lift my phone and give them a ring if I was needing anything. And that's probably a special thing because sometimes you play in teams that doesn't really happen. But someday it will be nice to come back to Easter Road and that group. I think I come back once, but for it was a CIS Cup reunion, and it was just a meal, and it was nice to catch up with everybody. But one of those games, those charity games, would actually be nice to talk out in that team again, because again we had a special team, and user Hibs fans through and through, and I'm sure you'll go through all your greats and all your favourite players, and that was an era where I think Hibs fans probably did get excited about their football.
How does it feel knowing you probably fit into one of, you'd be in a lot of the teams, like if we were picking our best 11 for fans at our age, definitely you would be in that team. How does that feel?
I would never disrespect myself. First and foremost, I was just grateful to come, and I was just always grateful to pull the shirt on for Hibs. Let's get that straight. I believed in my ability. I knew I had to work and develop in my game. I kept my feet in the ground. I never got myself carried away that it was any better than anybody else. But what I knew I did have, and I knew I could hurt teams. And, I always seemed to do that against the big clubs as well. And I suppose as a right winger, I was over at Hibs last season at my eldest club. He was torturing me to get over at the end of last season. So I ended up getting over to the Aberdeen game and took him and my father-in-law over. And I seen Mickey Weir. Mickey Weir was sitting in the players' lounge, and I heard the stories whenever I got the Hibs then with the greats before, and you knew then you were trying to live up to those players that gone before. So I took a general interest in the history of the club and the players that went before me, and you tried to emulate what they did. You tried to win a cup. You tried to create great memories. You tried to, European nights. You tried to get people off their feet. And I think as a winger, Mickey Weir was always chatting about it being exciting, and there was other ones, Russell Latipi, and different types of players. But those kind of players that, when a player picked up the ball and he was 30 yards from goal, he wasn't going to go sideways or backwards. He was going to try and make something happen. And even speaking to Mickey that last time, Mickey says to me about, groups of players that he's seen in recent teams. And listen, we've done well. We've got the Holy Grail. We got that Scottish Cup victory, which we were all glad of. But some of the teams have struggled, and some of the wide men have probably struggled, because when you're a boy, when you play at Easter Road and you're out, and football's evolved, and we're playing with wing backs now, and you probably don't have the old traditional wingers. But for me, it's one of those ones. When you get the ball and you come out wide, you were expected to make something happen. Now, don't get me wrong, it could have been group chats to guess on a Sunday night, and I might have been playing, I might have been getting lumps tore out of me, but that's what was expected of you. You were expected to excite people. You were expected to, get on the ball and give people, excitement. And I like to think that, yes, I definitely did frustrate, I suppose, at weekends, but there was other games that when you were on it, it was worth your entry fee anyway.
See, you mentioned there about being in the stand and people expecting you to emulate Mickey Weir. What advice would you give to the next generation of Hibs players who are trying to emulate Ivan Sproule?
Well, listen, to me, it's what you've got to do. You have to play without fear. You've got to give absolutely everything. And I think even when you're not having your best day, as long as Hibs fans can see you giving absolutely everything, and going back to that Aberdeen game, and it was back, come near the end of the season, and people will say to me about games petering out. I just want to see fight. I'm now in the other end of it. I'm the one in the stand with my son going to watch the games. I'm the one now that's got an opinion. I'm like you see now, sitting, saying what's he doing there, and get that ball in the box and whatever. But for me, it's just that somebody gives them absolutely everything. If somebody's coming off that pitch and he isn't at the best game, but he's trying, he's busting himself, he's tracking back, he's hitting every tackle, not pulling out of a tackle. Like, I was always 11.5 stone, but I never shied from a tackle. There's I have images in my room here, and my shirt's up, of me and Bobo Baldy going toe to toe, and I think that's what probably took the Hibs fans to me, because you never backed down and you never had fear, and you believed in the club you were playing for. And we're all football men, and you're Rangers, you're Celtic, you're Aberdeen, you're Hearts, whoever you are. If you're a Hibs man and you're playing for Hibs, they expect you to give absolutely everything. And until the day, and even my second spiel to the day I left, I give absolutely everything. And I think that was the thing when you're saying about what I would give advice to players that are coming into the squad now. And I see Lee and Jimmy saying, my mates are saying some good players there, but there's going to be weight, there's going to be expectation on them because last year wasn't good enough, and we're going to have to get the excitement back. And as I said, Martin Boyle was probably for me the one that I enjoyed watching Martin, and you know, he got me off the edge of my seat when I watched Hibs, and he was exciting. He was at times unpredictable, but he had that cutting edge, and again, I like to think he's the kind of last player for me now that Hibs we're excited about.
Whose hat trick against Rangers was better, yours or Martin Boyle's?
All mine all day. No, as I say, I rung Martin after he got the hat trick, and I was speaking to him. We were exchanging text messages and stuff, and listen, it was just great to see, you know, someone else coming through and doing that. And he's a special player, and to me, probably last season as well, if you took Martin Boyle out of Aberdeen or took Martin Boyle out of Hearts or even Rangers or Celtic, you know, for how the way our team was set up last year, it was always going to have a massive impact in the team. And as I said, you know, Martin can go with his held head high. He's been there, you know, he's won his trophies, and he left I suppose a legacy at the club as well. And you three men will know yourself. You'll name Martin, you'll name me, you'll name all the ones that you'll remember that day where you were. You'll remember that bar you were going to after for that pint when you got that 3 points or when you got that cup one. And again, I think that's the part that endears you to fans. And I suppose not just being a one season wonder, then your name is chatted about for a wee while longer after you've left.
So speaking about your hat trick at Ibrox, Ivan, talk us through that. Like, what do you remember about that day in the game and the goals?
Just one of those ones. I was having a bit of an unsettled period off the pitch. You know, I mentioned moving away from home and just settling in a big city. And, you know, I suppose at times you were a bit part player, and it was hard from playing Irish League and playing every week. And, you know, I thought it was getting closer and closer. And listen, Tony Mowbray was a very intelligent man. He knew what he was at with me all along. But I was getting frustrated, and I was just about to pack up and go home the week before the hat-trick. I think a deal was near sorted with Linfield. Linfield obviously being the biggest club back here, and they expressed an interest, and I had says yes, I would accept it and go back home. And Tony Mowbray chatted me out of it, and I think, you know, my head was messed up that week at training, but he pulled me in the Friday and he said, listen, I'm going to put you in the squad tomorrow, get your head on. And I just, you know, again, everyone knows when I was a younger boy, you know, growing up around here, obviously Rangers was a club that I grew up supporting because of Gascoigne or whatever. And so I had all those connections. I go into Ibrox, and the next thing I come on, and I suppose I had a bit of anger coming on the park as well because of, you know, just I wanted to prove that I was good enough in that environment. And then, of course, Big Gaz when I come off the park, turn around to Mowbray and says, what the fuck's he going to do? So again, nobody needed to give me any more motivation than that. And as I said, you know, a fantastic stadium along with Parkhead and Ibrox. And once the first woman done, and as I said, Scott Brown was in his prime. And if you were ever to do your coaching badges now, which, you know, I've been doing and whatever, and you want to put on a counter-attacking masterclass, just watch that video back, because, you know, that's how you defend and that's how you break. And, you know, you were up against the likes of Fernando Rixons and you know, of this world, you know, God rest them, and some of the greats, you know, Barry Ferguson, you know, they had a great side. You know, Rangers had a great side, but we absolutely tore them to bits. And, you know, again, it's no matter how many goals I would have got for Hibs or other better goals that I remember I got, you know, I think the Celtic goals, I think I finished up with maybe 5 against Celtic in total. Nobody ever wants to speak about them. And even when we beat Rangers in the Cup, you know, when we filled the back end at Ibrox that day, and it was unbelievable. But I suppose that the hat-trick is an iconic moment for Hibs, and I suppose could have come off the bench. And I think it only was on the park maybe less than half an hour. I think I'll take that one to the grave, but that's not a bad way to go.
Did you say anything to Gary O'Connor after the game, or did you just kind of pass him the match ball for the hat-trick?
Listen, Big Gaz is another good friend of mine, and Big Gaz had a mentality that he was going to score. Well, if he was having a 2 out of 10 or a 1 out of 10, he was still going to score. And listen, for me, we were a close-knit bunch, and them boys was good to me. And listen, after that, you know, it was a bit of a roller coaster for me, because I went then to I think after that Saturday, Tony Mowbray rung me on the Monday and he said, listen, you've got your international call-up, and I'd, again, never been capped before, and I went straight into the squad against, I think it was Wales in England, the night we beat England 1-0, and I ended up coming on against Beckham and Rooney and Lampard and all those boys on the Wednesday, and listen, it was Royal Rover stuff. You had a hat-trick against Rangers, then you go and beat England, then I come back home and I thought I was definitely going to start against Dundee United, and Mowbray said, no, you're in the bench today again. So, done it again, come off the bench and scored the winner again. We won 2-1. So, no, great times. And listen, you know, you're chatting about memories that a boy didn't get across the water. He was 22, and that's Royal Rover stuff. You know what I mean? And I was just, Hibs had given me all those memories. So, you know, when people say to me, why do the club mean so much to you, and why do you keep going back over, and you know, why have you got such a connection with them, and why do you still buy your kids, you know, Hibs kits? Because I was at Bristol City for 4 years as well, and you know, got the playoff final. And as I said, fans there, you know, I was lucky because fans there seemed to take to me as well. But I just have a special bond with Hibs and what they done for me. And they're passionate fans that, listen, they can strip you down. They can let you know when you're not doing well, but when you are doing well, they can be right behind you. And as I say, I had more times right behind me than I had when they were bringing me down.
Did you ever have to buy a pint in Leith again after that, or?
As I said, I used to get the odd free pint in Leith, let me tell you. But I think, but no, listen, I ended up living in Leith as well. Me and my wife bought a new apartment down Leith, and I suppose I ended up moving and living in the heartland of it. So you couldn't get away from it. So when you went for your pint of milk and your loaf of bread, there was no escaping Hibs. But listen, I loved it. I felt comfortable because it was all Hibs people around me, and you know, at that time, you take under your home comforts. And I used to remember walking from a flat over to Easter Road, because we used to change at the ground before we headed off to the public parks the first time I was there. So listen, it was, for me, it was a dream come true. You could, from an engineering background where you were going to do a hard day's graft, to taking a stroll over to Easter Road with a wash bag under your arm and you didn't even have to carry your bits. Your bits was being washed over there. So hey, listen, I love the dream, and hopefully, as I said, these young Hibs boys now and the players, the current crop that are there now, because you know, I come back then to the second group then of the training ground. It's one of those things for me. It's a wonderful experience, and that's something that any player should be grateful to do.
So talk a wee bit about the CIS Cup. So the two games you like focus on the final, but before we get to the final, talk about the quarter final, the derby at Easter Road. So John Collins had just come in as manager, and then we played Hearts in the quarter final. I think it was sort of early November. 1-0 win for Hibs, but we absolutely battered them. What do you remember for that night, Ivan?
Well, any time you beat Hearts is good.
Yep.
So no, listen, we knew ourselves that, you know, it was a full house. It was, you know, it was a hostile night. You know, that, you know, Hibs and Hearts always going to be rivalry, and at that time we knew that year that we probably had a really good side, and we knew that was a great opportunity. So Hearts we seen as a big obstacle in our way, because we knew if we could get rid of Hearts that, you know, we were in with a good chance to go on, because we obviously fancied ourselves. But yeah, it was a magic night in the semi-final, and as I say, John came in and the momentum kind of went with us, and you know, we ended up beating them easy that night. Then, you know, I can remember Congalvez, I think he was marking me, and it was a good ding dong all night. And again, I always come up against the monsters, the 6'2" men, but absolute taking lumps at each other. But at the end up, we went on to get the one that night, and it was a proper derby. And as I said, when you get into a good clash like that and you come out on top of it, there's nothing more satisfactory. And when we got that one, I felt as if it, you know, it gave us the confidence and the momentum to go on and, as I say, do what we done in the semi against St Johnstone, then go on. And as I said, we went on to win comfortable in the final.
Can you sense it as a player on a night like that when you're like on top? So I mean, Hibs' record in derbies is not the best, right? It's fair to say, and Hearts had a habit of sort of nicking a result when they've been battered. Like we've seen it so many times. But that night, could you sort of tell that they were never going to, you know, take anything for the game, or did you have a bit of doubt about it? Or
no, we had a confidence that year. There was a confidence about us. We were, you know, we'd been beaten I think the semi final of the Scottish Cup. We had a couple of wee bits of disappointment. And at that time, that group wanted to get their hands on something. And, you know, we were desperate to win a trophy. And we knew ourselves that night. Listen, it was Easter Road. It was our home patch. And we were going to make it count. And for me, it was one of those ones again, you know, every tackle was contested. Every ball was contested. Every ball was chased down. And that was very much the mantra that night when we went out to play that game, that, you know, you do your die, you know, you don't give up on anything at all, no matter what part of the game it should be in. You weren't going to lose. And that was that was John's team talk that night. And I can still remember it. And listen, we did give every player, you can sense it in the park. Like, you know, first 5 minutes, we were closing down every ball. You know, when you're chasing things down that probably in another game you maybe wouldn't chase down. And that, to me, we were all zoned in. And listen, we got the one. And to me, then it was the catapult then for us to go on and take the rest of the tournament on, which, you know, again, we got a tough game then in the semi-finals, but again, we ended up winning it comfortable. But I feel as if that team at that time thoroughly deserved to go and win the cup that year.
Was there a big difference between John Collins and Tony Mowbray then? Like, obviously that was where it turned, but we still carried on playing the similar style of football. But obviously things changed, right? But what was the big difference between the two? Like, what? Just,
I would say different types of men, just different man management skills. You know, Tony was obviously a man that, to me, he was a bit more of a father figure to the boys, if I can use it in that term. You know, young lads sometimes making silly mistakes, and, you know, many had bust up in the training ground, and, you know, silly things like that. But maybe young boys that were maybe not happy for instance, an apartment they were living in, and, you know, they needed to get something sorted out. He kind of looked after a lot of things, maybe outside football as well as football. And to me, that's good man management. You can get the best out of someone that way. John was obviously very, very professional as an approach. Pat was very, very fit, had very, very high expectations because of where he had been in his career. And he, you know, it doesn't take anybody, when you mention the name John Collins, you automatically think about the great career he had and the great professional he was and how he looked after himself. And, you know, he was a winner, but two different styles of manager. And, you know, again, I respected both men immensely, but if you ask me who's the one, probably I felt it more out of my game. Although I did have some great moments under John, I felt Tony was that person. And I was sad to see Tony go, but very glad that John came in and ended up lifting the cup for John. But for me, then I decided that was at the end of that, it was time for me to move on. And listen, hearsay's a different thing. It's one, as you always say, if Tony Mowbray had stayed, what could that team have ever achieved? But it always comes down to the financial thing as well for players. And when I say that, I mean, you know, could Hibs afforded to hold on to all that squad without selling them to bring players in? I don't know. It's always the $1 million question. And I suppose every club pines for that multi-millionaire that you see running around football now that can hold everything together. But no, listen, John went on to do a good job and stayed a while after. But no, for me, two different styles in Tony and John, but both good managers.
Do you think he was hindered by the players that were all young guys that Tony Mowbray got at a great time to develop and take them on, but then they all got to the stage where they thought, I can go and earn a lot more money elsewhere? And then John Collins came in just at that point when they were all looking elsewhere? Or I think John Collins could have done the job Mowbray done if he had them at the same time.
It's hard to say. I think Tony Mowbray molded it, and that's, to be honest, I think he had a lot of respect from that group of players. I'm not saying that John didn't have that. I'm saying there's two different styles there, two different managers. We were obviously a team that at that time believed in Tony Mowbray's plans, and John come in, and I suppose at that time probably the winning the cup brings attraction to the team. And listen, you know as well as I know, Scott Brown and Kevin Thompson were always getting, you know, there was people every time you lifted the paper, basically it was either Rangers or Celtic, or it was somebody down south. So it always happens, and it just so happened at that time that we had such a good crop, and then I suppose that the club come into a point of view then where it was always one of those things that players were going to go. But what do you see this?
It is. Colin,
So I'm just going to go down here and get the charger on here. 1 minute. That's another help. So there you go. There's hubbies running around the house everywhere.
excellent.
So you mentioned Scott Brown, Kevin Thompson, and the moves that they got. So you obviously got your move to Bristol City in 2007. Was there any firm interest from Dnipro, or was that just paper talk? Because there was talk of a big money move, I think, after we'd played them in Europe.
No, listen, the Dnipro one was very much, it was something that was about, well, I was asked that I want to make it happen. Obviously, everybody remembers the games against Dnipro in Europe, and they're fantastic nights. And I think at Easter Road, they come to play us, and I ended up having 3 pages, I think, in the back of the Sun or something. I wasn't again, probably still stuck in the bench. But their manager had turned around and says about me something about being the joker in the pack, and basically was wary of me or whatever. But we played the 2 games in Europe, and then I can remember Tony Mowbray bringing me down to his office and saying, listen, at that time the club have had an official approach from Dnipro, and was there something that I would be interested in? Like, I was basically like Crocodile Dundee when I landed in Edinburgh, so trying to take me to Ukraine was going to be maybe just that step too far. But no, listen, there was money chatted about, and like Cahan Hibs bought me for maybe 10 grand or £5,000 off Institute, and I think there was the figure that was getting touted about from Dnipro to Hibs at that time. I think Rod Petrie made a carry me in his back over there if he could have got rid of me.
Mustache start twirling at the figures.
But listen, I was enjoying my time at Hibs. Myself and my wife had just settled really well in Edinburgh. Things were going well at Hibs. It was the wrong time for me to move. Financially, probably it could have been a game changer. Listen, Gary O'Connor went to Lokomotiv Moscow, and you hear about the money that was chatted about with players that do go out to Russia and Ukraine, etc. But for me, I have no regrets, because I was able to go on and lift the CIS Cup, and I was able to go on and have all great memories at Hibs. And listen, money's great, but I love my life by when I look back at the memories I've got. When I'm chatting about football memories, life memories, memories of my children, memories of my wife, memories of my family. That's more important to me than money. As I said, I never sold my soul for money at that time to go, and I felt as if that I had still that thing left to do and try and emulate one of the Hibs teams and actually go and win something. And listen, I went and done that, and to this day I still always say I was proved right.
So the CIS Cup final, the day at Hampton, talk us through what that day was like. Sort of for the start of the day through to the end of the day, Ivan. What do you remember of it?
Well, I remember obviously staying in a hotel the night before, and John Collins come around and give us all the montage DVDs of our season and that, and up to that point. And we'd been away and prepared Marbella for I think 4 or 5 days, and we were extremely sharp. The one thing I remember getting into that final is I can remember that training camp in Marbella, and we were, when you say things is ticking and things is gelling right. I knew the way we'd come together in that training camp, that we looked sharp, we looked slick. We had no injury doubts. We had we had a real squad of players, not even making the squad that time. And that's the strength and depth. Though it was a young squad, but we had still good players that were sitting there in the stand. And I just remember getting into the game with, an immense amount of confidence, the players around me. And, the build-up. I remember driving into Hampden and then just to see a green and white. You always seen the big games against Rangers and Celtic and Hearts, and the big crowds at Easter Road. But this was like something we hadn't seen before as players for Hibs. And we knew then, I knew when I landed there that day. I'd been to Hampden before for the semi-final, I think, which Dundee beat us. But I knew when we got there that day that we couldn't let that one slip, because it was a final. And I knew getting to walk up those steps, if we had done it, we were going to do something that, the last team to do it was the Skull Cup then. So we were getting to emulate something, and we were getting to write our names in history. So listen, we were never going to let that one slip that day. And as I say, we were sharp on the day, and it's a day fondly remembered by myself and my family and a lot of my friends that made the trip over.
And how was it seeing the fans? Because that was probably the first time, apart from the AEK Athens game years before, where Sunshine on Leith got like a really good air in. I remember like the BBC coverage, sort of they stopped talking and just showed the fans singing. How was that from a player's point of view, seeing it as you're doing the lap on? Or?
Well, I'm not going to lie. Like as I said, because I was involved in Hibs for a few years, and you get to become embedded in it. You get to get those feelings for the club, and then obviously it's such an emotional song, and you look into the, as I said, I lived in Leith, so every time I went for a pint of milk, or every time I went for me and my partner, my wife would have went, say for instance, to the shops to their groceries or whatever. Up until that final, you grow men saying, "Listen, you've got to do this for us. We've suffered for so long." And for me, and again, I used to have the odd pint down the volley in Leith. So they used to say to me, "Listen, you've got to bring this home for us. You've got to, you've a chance to do something and make us all proud." And I can remember standing that day, and Sunshine Leith was ringing round Hampden, and there was a lump on my throat, like it was tear stuff. And until this day yet, the Proclaimers album is played in the house. The kids even listen to it, and listen, whenever Sunshine and Leith comes on, it'll always take you back to that day, and take you back to that memory, and standing and seeing that sea of green and white and everybody singing, and standing there with your teammates, the kit man, Tam and Joyce at that time, and everybody that worked so hard to get there, and you connect with the fans at that time. That's the way I can describe it. You connect, and no matter where you go the rest of your life, or no matter what you do, that moment will stay with you forever. Just like the hat-trick things, or just like the goals against Celtic, and just like when you beat Hearts in there, but that was different. That was, you were going up the stairs to lift a trophy, and the fans lifted it with you. We done that together. You do that. Sometimes you do individual things in yourself, but when you win a cup and you went through a couple of rounds and you get to that final, and there's a family getting up in the morning with husband and wife, 3 kids, and they're driving along motorway in the bus, and they're having a great day, and the players are driving there to the game, and then it's almost like they're one. Everybody wins it that day. The players don't won the trophy. The fans won it as well. But a special day.
And the party in the night, did Collins let everybody have a drink, or was it orange juice only?
Well, I don't think on this occasion it wouldn't have mattered what kind of rules was there, because I think the time I got off the bus at the council reception, me and Boozy, I think we had 2 bottles of champagne on us each. So no, let's just say the drinking ban didn't count that night. And no, we celebrated it. And listen, we celebrated it big, and we done it the right way. I can remember going back to the civic reception, and there was glasses of champagne going round, and listen, the boys were all on the high. Then we come back to Easter Road, and Easter Road was absolutely mobbed. And I can remember my mum and my wife ringing me and saying, listen, they were outside, but they'd just get into the stadium to all the families to wait on us. And then I remember us in the change room, and then they announced all the players out individually onto the pitch. And I'm coming out the tunnel, and it's up the stairs to go out. So let's just say we had a good night. We celebrated in style, and to this day I can remember that party. And I remember that night walking then from Easter Road. So I walked that night with my family down Leith to go back to my flat, but I walked with all the Hibs fans. And again, I was not just walking home with my mum, my wife, my brother, my father-in-law. I was walking home with about 100 Hibs fans, and they walked us back to the house, and that's things like that. They're magic moments. Like,
was there a tinge of regret in that, because we reached the Scottish Cup semi-final that season as well? We played Dunfermline, and I think a lot of us as fans sort of expected us to beat Dunfermline and go on and potentially get a double, which would have been unheard of really at the time. How big a regret was it for the squad and for yourself that we didn't quite make it?
Again, on the day, we just didn't live up to our billing. We didn't turn up on the day, and again, sometimes it's one of those things. Maybe you go into it too confident, and you learn as a, you're always say about every team. Even the likes of the best teams in the world, you'll hear some interviews where even the top teams are still learning. And at that time, we were still learning. So again, we were a fantastic side, but just because you're a good side and you've good individuals doesn't give you any God-given right to go out and beat any team. And if you don't turn up right with the right attitude, well then you're going to get egg in your face. And Dunfermline were probably the hungrier side that day, and they went on ahead to have a fantastic performance against us. Yes, we live in regret, and we did feel as if at that time we could have went on and done something. we didn't. And the one thing you've got to do is hold up and be responsible about it and say, listen, we didn't perform in the day. We let ourselves down. And it's, I suppose, one of those ones that the cat that got away from us, you know what I mean? But and you knew that it was one that was great to win the League Cup, and you never, you know, it's a fantastic achievement. But everyone knows the Scottish Cup was the one that Hibs fans were pining because it took us so long to win it. So no matter where you were, unless you were living in Mars, you know, as a Hibs fan, you knew about the connection with the Scottish Cup and the Hibs. And unfortunately for me, I got, you know, with 2 semi-finals, I was beating a final. It's probably one of my biggest regrets in football, but hey ho, that's how it goes. And I'm glad that somebody else went and I suppose Lewis Stevis went on. Lewis, a good friend of mine, you know, we won the League Cup together. We were beating the final of the Scottish Cup, and then when I seen him being able to go then and actually win the Scottish Cup, and then him have the 2 medals, that was a special day for me.
It was reported in the media that there was some dressing room unrest ahead of the Dunfermline game in the Scottish Cup semi-final. Did that impact the team's performance on the day?
Listen, the stories will always come out, and you know the thing about it is, I think at a time probably people says that John and some of the players weren't pulling, or for whatever reasons it was. You can't blame things like that. I don't think there was any unrest as towards not wanting to turn out and win that game. Listen, you've got a football club that you knew what you were going out to play in. You knew you were going out to, I suppose, try and do the double, as you mentioned there now, for a group of players that probably weren't expected to do that. So no unrest at that time. Listen, people, what I learned quite quickly, you know, when you come from Irish League over to Scotland and England, media and storytelling's rife. And it's what sells papers, it's what wraps chippy at the weekend. And there was nothing any bigger than that, only maybe 1 or 2 rows or arguments with players and managers, which happens in every changing room, what happens in any, but just because we were that group of players at that time, and we were getting that bit of attention, they tried to make a mountain out of a molehill, but certainly that wasn't the reason why we lost against Dunfermline. The reason why we get beat from Dunfermline because they were hungrier in the day and they were better in the day. And sometimes as a footballer, when you're honest with yourself and you look at yourself in the mirror, you never try and blame rows or arguments for losing a game of football. Did
the squad find it funny that Mikey Stewart got all the blame for it?
Listen, Mikey's the character. Mikey's one of those ones. If he was in a room himself, he could find an argument with himself. But a good lad, and someone that, listen, he's one of those ones on a pitch that he when he played for Hibs, he gets stuck in. He was a tough competitor. When you're opinionated and you've got a voice and you've got an opinion like he did, it's obviously always going to cause friction between someone. I was one of those ones. I never had any arguments with him because he never had any reason to have friction with me. But again, Mikey's obviously one now. He's still making a job of it now over there in Scotland and the pundit and one thing and another. So, listen, nothing to do with Mikey. Mikey it's easy to put the blame at someone that's got an opinion. It might be the quiet man in the corner that was the one that cost you the game, maybe not the loudest one in the room.
And then, how did you move away from Hibs come about, Ivan?
Listen, again, and I'd be honest about it as well, the Dnipro thing was very much something that could have happened for me, and I suppose late into the game, you know, I was an engineer as a background, and my agent got involved with me then, as I said, about a year into the second contract I signed at Hibs. He got involved with me, and listen, I spent a couple of years at Hibs, and a club from the Bristol City had put this interest in from the Championship. And to me at that time, you know, it was a financial thing, and that was the reason why I done it. You know, Hibs were never going to be able to match the money that was going to get paid to me there in the Championship. And to me, it was life-changing money for me. It was a 3-year deal with a possibility of a 4th, and it was probably going to, you know, secure my wife and my kids for a number of years. So you've got to go and probably take things as what would you class as football? You play football with your heart and you play it because you love it. But you've obviously got to, when you think about yourself as a football and the length of your career, you've got to make as much money as you can at that time. And unfortunately, probably I had been at the peak of where it could be with at Hibs, and I knew then the next move for me was to go any bigger. Was I going to have to go to England? And I did have the back of my head as well as a financial thing that I wanted to try myself in England. You know, I felt as if at that time I had really done really well in Scotland. That I suppose one of those at that time before I left, I think I'd finished with 10 goals that season, and I would like to think probably one of the most feared wingers at that time playing in that league. And then you want to realise, could you get yourself to the Premier League? And I went and met Bristol City, and Gary Johnson at that time knew an awful lot about me and had followed me a lot that season previous, and was a big part of the way they wanted to set up and the way they wanted to play. And I took my wife down to the city, and it was a heart wrench to leave, because there was an emotional tie there, and I thought I could leave easy and take that move. But I can remember meeting Sheila Kinghorn and Rod before I took the move, and sitting crying in the room with them. Listen, I knew why, and Rod knew as well, that I took the move because I was securing things for my family. But I went down, and listen, it was a success for me. We just missed out in the Premier League. The first year I went down, we got to the playoff final with Hull beat us 1-0, and played 38 games. And listen, I'm not going to lie, the championship to me at that time was a step up for me. I felt as if the boys were bigger, stronger. The squads were, you had big clubs like Leith, you had Newcastle, you had a lot of big clubs on there, and it was a challenge, and a different challenge in Scottish football. And even for my international career at that time, I felt as if it was the right thing to do. So, listen, to leave Hibs was a heart wrench, but I think for family wise and for my development as a man, as anything else, to try and go and see if you can go and, I would always be looking back and think, well, why did you not take the move to Ukraine? Why did you not try yourself down in England? It's great. Like Lewis Stevenson, he's a really, really good friend of mine, and someone that, that is always going to be a close friend for life. And it would be great to stay at one club all your life. But for me at that time, I felt as if, for me personally, I had to go and try that. And I've no regrets to do so. And I was just glad then that I had the opportunity, and the way I left the club, that the door was left open, that I could always return.
And you played with, I'm Colin, this is your question I'm going to steal for you. You played with Lee Johnson and Jamie McAllister. So, from what you know about them, what do you think they're going to bring as a management team at Hibs?
Well, listen, 4 years I went down, and Jamie McAllister, I lived right beside Jamie for 4 years in Bristol. So Jamie's one of my best mates, and Lee obviously as well for 4 years. So Gary obviously was Lee's dad. So Gary was my gaffer, and Lee played centre midfield. I played the right wing, and Jamie played left back. So that was the three of us played for a long period of time. And Lee as a person, as a perfectionist, he's annoying. And annoying to the point where he wants everything so right. He always knew that he was going to go into management material, because he was always trying to do things different. If you understand what I mean, he was always just trying to get himself an extra age as a player. He was obviously, he was interested in coaching while he was playing, to understand aspects of the game and systems. And if there was ever a meeting, and you've got 25, 30 players in the championship, which you do like carrying our squads, and you've got team meetings, and Lee always could, his dad was the manager, but he always had his opinion of how the team should be set up. And you knew he was, obviously, when we were away in training camps and stuff, Lee had ideas. So I think that he's going to be a success for us. And Jamie McAllister is probably one of the toughest competitors, left back that I had played with for a number of years. No nonsense, total pro. Dedicated, committed, and again, to me, was a real good, loyal friend. And the two of them make a good partnership. As I said, I would like to say one's a good cop, one's a bad cop, but they've just got a good mix, and they're both competitors, and they'll set standards on there. I know they will. And they rung me before they got the job and let me know that they were down to the last two. And once I heard they were down to the last two, I was just praying that they got the job, because I knew that they're two good men to go in there. But obviously, when they did get the job, then I says, right, well, you better not mess it up now.
So if they phoned you and said they were down to the final two, were you the source of the rumours that he was going to be joining?
Sorry?
Were you the source of the rumours that they were going to be joining before the candidates had been announced?
I think you know Edinburgh and Scottish football well enough that it's not down to me that the rumours come out.
You came back to Hibs, towards at the end of your time with Bristol. I think it was Colin Calderwood was in charge then, if I remember right. How did that move back come about?
Well, listen, I had the chance to at that time, you know, a couple of clubs in England were speaking to me, but I was kind of blinded once the interest, my agent had says to me again, Hibs have expressed an interest in taking you back. And listen, my wife had settled down in Edinburgh, or not in Edinburgh, in Bristol, and my kids just started nursery. So it was the fact of upheaving again and moving kids around and family around. And listen, that's part of football. And what I was lucky about when I was playing was I stayed at places, you know, not just seeing it. I was there for 4 years. And then I decided then now that there was just something homely about Edinburgh, and I love the club. And I did feel as if I had unfinished business, and I was trying, I'm not lying to you, I was trying to get that Scottish Cup. It was always in the back of my head. It was always the thing that bugged me when I left. And it was the one thing that I felt that we could come back and things could click right, we could do it. And to me, it's one of those ones. I knew when I moved my wife and we had our second child, I was somewhere I would like to start and raise a family as well. Because my mum's Scottish and I have family in Scotland. So it all added up. And sometimes when you take a move, if I had a move to, for instance, Coventry City and signed there, I would have had got to know the area again and, you know, got to know the fans. I knew I was going back into my second family again. And that's what it felt like when I went back up the road. And so the reason that I went back to Hibs was because I felt it was unfinished business, and just because the first time was, I suppose, a success.
Fantastic. And I think so. We're just kind of conscious of this time. We'll take some questions from Twitter. John, Colin, do you want to ask anything before we pull up the Twitter questions?
No, crash on.
I'll just crack on, aye.
Right, like I said before we started, Ivan, we don't vet these, so
right.
I apologise in advance for what might follow. Right, first question is for WTC 1981, and is: have you ever been to Benalmadena?
Benalmadena.
No. I don't know.
We don't understand either.
Yeah.
No, don't know.
So he's a mate of mine, and I'm sure it was back in 2007. Me and another mate were staying in an apartment in Benalmadena, and we saw you kind of like wandering down on the, I guess next to like where the boats were parked. And all of our mates swore blind that you were absolutely not in Benalmadena at the same time.
I can't remember being in Benalmadena, but listen, you never know.
Right, the questions don't get any better. Next one is for Louisa's, who asked, "Can I have your babies?"
Unfortunately, I've got 3 at the minute, and if you'd see them in the house here now, no more.
She followed up to say at one point she had offered you and your brother to crash on her couch, and you declined. So there you go. Oscar Ramage said, "Are you here, there, or every fucking where, or all 3?"
Listen, whenever you're under 30, you can be all them places, but as you go over 30, as you know yourself, it becomes a wee bit harder.
Yep.
How much have you slowed down, Ivan? How much have you slowed down? Can you beat the boys?
No, listen, still playing. Still played up, and I was managing in the championship over here in the Irish League. And unfortunately, probably had to keep on toggling my boots on. So I kept myself in pretty good shape, and still play it. We won. We're actually away there on Wednesday night and played in a 7-a-side tournament. We ended up winning it. So our style was counter-attack football. So I still was playing up front, and we were getting battered for most of the game. And then we knocked the ball over the top, and I scored. So we ended up winning it. So something never changed.
Daniel asks, "What apart from the obvious hat trick answer, what did you think your best game in a Hibs top was?"
I think probably the best game was probably we started in the Scottish Cup against Rangers. Remember, we had the full of the back stand. I think it was the same year as the hat trick, and I scored, and Big Gaz scored, and I think it was maybe
Chris Killen.
One. So, absolutely tore them apart that day, and felt from the start of the game to the end of the game, they just couldn't handle me. And there becomes a game where you feel as you're unplayable, and that was one of those games where I felt as if, you know, you couldn't be handled. And you know, there's loads of stuff. There was, you know, the Tynecastle. Then you go back to Easter Road. We beat Hearts as well. I remember cutting one back to Boozle on that day. Boozle flicked around his leg, and I had them in toast that day. Listen, as a winger, you're always going to have good days where it works for you, and you're going to have days then where everything you hit's going to come off your shin, or the fullback's going to get the better in the day. But no, my best games used to always come against, I suppose, Rangers and Celtic, and I suppose that's the way it ended up.
Was there any opponent that you always looked forward to face, like an individual player you thought, you had the beating of them?
To be honest with you, and this is the truth, I never felt as if there was any. But the only way I can answer that one to you is I never felt there was anyone that I feared. And that's not being disrespectful. That's just that I never felt that if I had to run on anybody, I could run anyone. Don't get me wrong. You get different types of opponents. You get players that are quick. You get players that are strong. You get fullbacks that are aggressive. But the one thing, I suppose, as well as being quick, I was aggressive myself, so I could mix it up both ways. And that probably came from the Irish League, because, not disrespecting it, back then the Irish League's improved a lot now, but it was a tough league. So you had to know how to handle yourself. You're hit first or get hit. So I usually hit first. So
you mentioned. I was
ahead.
just going to say, you mentioned a couple of players. So Jamie McAllister, you said, was a really tough opponent. Really a tough teammate. You mentioned getting the better of David Murphy, and that was kind of what got you into the Hibs team. From a supporter's perspective, or at least from mine anyway, Michael Hart at Aberdeen and Jose Goncalves at Hearts that you mentioned, they were really difficult opponents for you. But who would you say was your toughest opponent that you went up against?
In my career, or
at Hibs in your career?
I suppose in my career, probably Ashley Cole, whenever we played against England. And I can remember playing again. We played Spain, out in Spain. Ramos, that's players at the national level. And then I suppose whenever you're down, and like Ricky Foster was another quick fullback. As I said, Goncalves was a big, strong boy as well. He was a big unit. Michael Hart. They were all, you name them there. They were all. Robbie Nielsen played against me. It was all those players. There was some great. Don't get me wrong. There was some great left backs, but the one thing as a footballer and a professional is you respect everyone, but you have to believe in yourself. And I just felt as if every time that I got in the park, and because of the way Hibs played under my style team, that we had the players that could find that pass to release you, and you never really were starting winning a ball because you knew you had enough talent around you to get it to you.
I think this will be the first time that Robbie Nielsen's been mentioned in the same breath as Ashley Cole and Sergio Ramos as well, which is saying something. Gordon, so just before I ask Gordon's question, I should say well done to Gordon. Gordon, who along with a bunch of other guys represented Longbangers at a wee charity football tournament up at the training centre at East Mainstay and won it overall. So well done, Gordon. But his question, he's got two here. What's it like being the fastest man on earth? And then seriously, where does the Rangers hat-trick rank in your career?
No, as I say, you'd be blessed to be born with things. As I said, I made a career out of, I remember from a young age just being faster than other kids, and it's something that I took into my game, and I built on it, and I worked as a youngster. And I think Tony Mowbray was the one that chipped the edges off for me, and really probably made me understand the game of football more than anything else. And because at times whenever I landed at Easter Road, they could have shouted open the gate because I just kept at people. And the one thing that you do as a footballer, if you educate yourself, you learn, and you're willing to listen to the coaches, you can improve and you can get better. And that was the one point that I had. As I said, the pace was obviously just naturally born. And then towards, as I said, just taking things on, you have to develop your game and go forward with that.
Were you ever timed over 100 metres or anything like that?
I think I was close. I think at school, I was nearly around. I think it was around 11 or just over 11. So as I said, never really timed, but it's one of those ones I had when I was younger. Was asked to go into athletics, but it never appealed to me. Basically, used to win all the races at school, and they used to try and make me to go to the county things, but I didn't want to go. But listen, just born with it and blessed with it, and as I said, luckily enough, it made me half a career.
Do you think you could outpace Martin Boyle?
That would be a good race. If it was probably to the bar, I think I definitely could do it. No, as I said, it would have been. I think it would be some side of if he was on one side and I was another, and maybe a big Gaz was up top. But no, listen, another fantastic player that you mentioned there, Martin. And listen, I'm a Hibs fan now through and through, and all I want to see now from the two pals that are in charge there now, and for the remaining future, is Hibs fans and enjoying their football, and me able to take my three boys back over to Easter Road and be able to sit in that crowd along with everybody else. And don't get me wrong, I found myself sitting in the Aberdeen game, and I was about to give off myself. I was doing a bit of rant myself. So I'm now in your shoes there, but you have a love for the club, and it's the walk down to Easter Road. It's having that pie, it's coming out, having that pint after the game, discussing the game, and I suppose for me now it's the flight in and the flight out, and knowing why you're doing it, because you're part of something bigger than I suppose just a game of football. You're part of a family, and I like to think I'm part of your family now, and the Hibs family are part of mine, and that's the way I see it for the remainder of my time anyway.
Perfect. Well, just as we wrap up, Ivan, just want to say thank you very much for coming on tonight. Thank you for some wonderful memories of you as a player, some wonderful moments as well. The cup win, I think, will be one that we will take to our graves as supporters, and obviously the hat-trick as well. We'll be back recording Extra Time straight after this, so if you want to listen to that, you can subscribe at longbangers.hubwave.net. And then we'll be back with Short Bangers next Thursday. Ivan, thanks very much for your time tonight. Colin, John, thanks for your time tonight. And we'll see you next time. Well, they trailed me down when I broke free. I drank all the whiskey in Tennessee. I don't drink water, no.